Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back. I'm chatting with Matt Smith from those Dino guys. We're trying to bring this thing. We're trying to bring a monthly, if we can, monthly or even bi-monthly interview podcast style. Just chat with you guys. Just between Matt and I, we're just trying to talk about things that we see from day to day in the professional tuning and engine building world of Harley-Davidson, and just I guess share a few common notes about what we're finding with different things. And especially in today's video, what we're going to be covering is the brand new VVT M8 engine from Harley-Davidson, the 121 cube engine. Matt and myself, as far as I know, are one of the only couple of guys out there who are actually publishing a bit of content about these things on the dyno with real world results. So we're pretty excited to be chatting about it today. And we're just going to compare some notes between ourselves, some of the findings we've found. Um, I've actually got a video of the engine that I was down in Sydney here in Australia at Harley-Davidson Australia, had the engine pulled down, went right through some of the components, went through all the changes. So if you want to check that out, guys, there'll be a link down in the description of this video so you can go over and check that out. And just while we're on that topic, folks, if you want to check out Matt's content, he's always publishing a lot of stuff out there, guys. Hit him up at those Dyno guys on Facebook. And he's also got a great series he's just been doing a lot of now, Shotgun with Matt, where he's just chatting to you about day-to-day topics, giving some first-hand information on a lot of the things that Matt sees from day to day, and some of the inside things too, guys, about push rod adjustment, exhaust selection, camshafts. So, I mean, the list goes on. I mean, it's an endless rabbit hole you can go down, folks. So be sure and head over and check that stuff out from Matt. It's some great videos. I've been watching a few of them myself, and just getting right into it, folks. So let's get straight into the video. Matt, welcome. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day. It's early morning over there in the States for you. It's late night here for me. So let's see what we can come up with.
Yeah. It's what 9 o'clock Saturday for you, and
Uh,
it's
10, 10
7 a.m.
o'clock, actually.
10
10,
o'clock.
10 o'clock Saturday.
Yeah, and it's a quarter after 7 in the morning on Saturday morning. So yeah,
Nice, nice. Well, thanks for joining me, Matt. It's always a pleasure to have you on here and, having a chat about this sort of stuff. So I'm excited to see where this goes today.
yeah, it's always fun. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Well, obviously, we'll just jump straight in, guys, and we're going to chat about obviously the new 121 cube CVO M8 engine from Harley Davidson has been out for some time now. And as I said earlier, there just I was down in Sydney, Australia here, looking at this engine, all the goings on in there, and we'll get into that later. But Matt and I have been actually mucking around with these things. Matt was lucky enough to get his hands on one just a couple of days ago, and found some great results with mucking around with it on the dyno there, and just comparing our notes earlier before we got started with the video, but we're actually finding that we're finding very similar numbers. So yeah,
Same, same.
I was actually lucky enough to fit a full Chromework system to it. And I'll just go on the record and say the Chromework system, it is a direct fit to the new M8 engine, right? It fits directly on there. The only difference being is there is no third O2 sensor bung post cat for the Chromework system. You have to fit one in there yourself for the crossover pipe. That's all you have to do. Otherwise, it's a direct fit. There is no mucking around whatsoever.
That's good to know. Yeah,
Yeah,
the one
so
that I did.
all it is,
Go ahead.
you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I just wanted to say, obviously the only thing was just that the post Cat O2 sensor that is now standard on all the new standard CVO engines, that is the only difference. So it was just literally drilled out in the bung there, welded it in, screwed the new sensor in, away we go. No issues, no reports of any engine lights coming on and that sort of thing. So no issues at all.
Well, that's great. Yeah, you're one up on me because you got to play with that Screaming Eagle tuner, and I haven't got to yet. So yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I didn't get a whole lot of time with that bike the other day. Just enough time to just kind of poke at it and see if I could find where like the obvious restrictions were, and just see what it would do.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, interesting results. And yeah, like I said, when we were talking, I mean, we're only a couple points different. Um, Different
Mm.
bikes, different dynos, different days, different fuels. different
different
environments.
countries.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I mean, we'll just get. I'll just a lot of you guys, if you follow me on YouTube, you probably would have seen the videos I did put out there. But the first one I got, I did a run in fourth gear because obviously the factory speed limiter. I'm not going to delve too much onto this, folks. If you don't understand why you need to do a full wide open run, I mean, I can't sort of break it down any more further, but you need to be able to do a full, as big of RPM sweep as you can possibly to get the most accurate result. Because uh, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'll leave it there. But I did a run in fourth gear, and the results came in at 101 horsepower and 117 foot-pounds of torque. Now, doing runs on the dyno, you should be doing them in or as close to as a 1-to-1 gear ratio as possible. And on Harleys, that's 6 gear. So when I disconnected the speed limiter, I was able to do a 6 gear run at 108 horsepower and 128 foot-pounds of torque. That was a completely factory bike. The ECM had not been touched. The air cleaner was stock. The exhaust was stock. And they were the results. As Matt just said earlier, I was lucky enough to fit a Screaming Eagle tuner to it, along with a full Chromeworks system. Now, the Screaming Eagle tuner, the street tuner that they have now, the new one, is only at this stage is only a base calibration that you flash into the bike. There is zero adjustment. There is nothing you can do. It is just an updated tune, and I believe it is only for the upgraded air filter and slip-on mufflers that Screaming Eagle offer. Now, I put that in. I've got a video on that, guys. Check it. The link will be down in the description. But when I put the exhaust on from Chromeworks, the full system, and flashed in the new calibration from Screaming Eagle, I was able to get 114 horsepower and 127 foot-pounds of torque out of it, which is that is an impressive result for a factory bike with just basic modifications. I mean, that is a really, really healthy result. I mean, if you're considering what you're trying to do out of a 114 or a 117 to get those sort of numbers, you're generally looking at a camshaft, a full stage 2 kit plus tuning. You'll probably get a little bit more horsepower than that with a stage 2 kit, but that's typically what you're going to achieve. So for a stock bike, it's an outstanding result as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think so too. And just like we just touched on, the old CVOs were 117 cubic inches. This one's 121. 121 sounds bigger, but we're only talking 4 cubes difference. And it doesn't, and just like you said, Harley did a good job with, now we're getting stage 2 numbers right out of the box. And it'll be fun to see how much we can push that envelope. What I came up with, very similar results. Of course, I did the 4th, 5th, 6th gear pulls and had extremely similar results to you. It was like 101 horsepower and like 122 foot-pounds of torque in 4th gear. 5th gear, it was like 105 horsepower and 125 foot-pounds of torque. 6th gear was 107 foot-pounds of torque and 125 foot-pounds of torque. That was with the speed limiter, or not speed limiter, but the ABS system unplugged. So I could get that full pull in 6th gear. And then, just poking around, trying to figure out where the restrictions were, because this bike that I had, it was totally stock, stock exhaust, stock everything. And I didn't have a tuner to play with. So my next step after that was to pull that air cleaner off. So I didn't pull the whole air cleaner assembly off like I seen you did in your video. All I did was pull the outside cover off and made another pull, and it jumped up to 100 and almost 15 horsepower and 130 foot-pounds of torque, which kind of blew my mind that big airbox was still that restrictive. So that was shocking. And then one thing that I was talking about with Tommy earlier was, I did not publish this because I just did that quick video, but I did do one cold pull on that. And the reason I did a cold pull is because obviously we don't have any tuning capabilities with that bike yet. And I wanted to see what the bike would do with more fuel to it. So I did a cold pull with it still in the enrichment cycle. and that thing jumped up to almost 116 horsepower and 100 and almost 36 foot-pounds of torque. So there is definitely potential. And when I did that cold pull, in the videos that people had seen that I did, obviously the dyno graph was kind of shaky because it wasn't tuned. With the cold pull, with a little more fuel to it, those things smoothed out. So there was still, there's still dips in it and whatever. But again, this was a factory bike, factory catted exhaust system, lots of restriction there. And so I'm excited where this thing's going to go. I think we're really going to pull some impressive numbers out of this bike.
Yeah, I can't agree more there, Matt. I think the M8 platform originally has been such a great leap forward from the twin cam days, and to think how could Harley better that now, and like to come out with this thing, like it has definitely moved the envelope further ahead, because there's definitely great, like we're starting out with basically stage 2 numbers out of a factory bike here. So you know, when tuning becomes available, which it will, it's just going to be one of those things, and it's just going to take time. And if I was a betting man, I would probably put my money with Power Vision being one of the first people to come to the party with a tuning device, because I know Techno Research in the States is sort of, that they're not really, are they not selling it anymore? I don't think they're making much more developments over there. I'm not sure, but.
And maybe you can comment on this because, so yeah, in the States, they're not selling anything tuning related anymore. They've discontinued all of that in the United States. I don't know if it's business as usual worldwide still with them, or are they starting to phase that out worldwide as well?
But in Australia, we can get it and use it without a worry. Updates still happen on their software all the time, but being Australia, we are only a very small percentage of their. I would assume we're only a very small percentage of their global sales, so
Okay.
we may be on the chopping block. I don't know, but for the moment, we still can use their stuff. But as I said, if I was a betting man, I'd be putting my money with Power Vision being one of the guys first to the party with full tuning capabilities for this new engine.
Yeah.
So I'm
I wouldn't
really
rule
looking forward
Sandro
to
out
it.
though.
Sorry, what's that?
I said I wouldn't rule Sandro out. He's pretty crafty, the
No,
owner of Techno
yeah,
Research. Um,
yeah, for sure. I
yeah,
hope they do. But I'm sure once the floodgates open, it'll be open slather as far as it's concerned. So
yeah.
um, just back, so touching back on that air filter removal there, Matt. I did post because mine jumped 11 horsepower, but granted, I did have the tuning software flashed in there, and I did have the full Chromeworks exhaust system. Now, typical comment section, I did have a few guys saying, "Oh, that's rubbish. Like, it wouldn't have jumped that much horsepower." And I'm like, I'm not going to be like whatever. It's just, well, I've got no reason to lie about it. That's exactly what happened on the dyno that day, and I'm
Hmm.
happy to do a full video for someone if they don't. But it's not my bike, and I really don't care. That's just what happened. So I'm not trying to cheat anyone's results here. This is just what it did. So, but I said you would know yourself, Matt, that there are air filters out there that are very restrictive and some that aren't so much, and this one just happens to be at least 8 to 10 horsepower restrictive in those circumstances.
It is. The airbox is giant. However, the filter element at the front of it is pretty small. And
Yeah.
as you know, air doesn't like to turn corners very much. And I
Hmm.
think that's kind of what it happens. It's choked off. It's just one of those designs. And maybe going down the road, it has some sort of ram air effect, but I don't think so.
No.
Not with the way
Yeah, it's
that
kind
that
of
filter
flat,
is. Yeah,
kind of flat on the
exactly.
front there.
Yeah, and people argue, there's a low pressure zone around the outside of it that allows air to go in there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's not how this works. But
No, no.
it's a good thought.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe with some sort of forced induction device, maybe it would work better as a plenum because it's so big. I mean, it's got a lot of volume there. But
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Other than providing fresh, cool air, that's about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, on airflow there, Matt, just touching on that. I'd like to just give some of the, if you haven't already seen my video on this thing where I pulled this engine apart or had it pulled apart, the new cylinder head design is much the same but very different from the original M8. So the intake port is completely redesigned. It is a lot wider now. Instead of just being a traditional round port, it is now an oval shape. And the short turn radius on the intake port is very nice now. Like just looking at it, it is very, very nice. Like Harley have redesigned the intake manifold to be a lot shorter. So they've got the throttle body actually mounted in closer to the intake port, and as a result, they've had to turn the throttle body on an angle to fit it in there closer. So they've redesigned the cylinder head, some of the fins. It's a new casting to get that in there. But the intake port is what I really see. That's where a lot of performance will be found, because that it is such an open port now, and the short turn radius where it comes into the intake valves, it's really nice straight out of the gate. It's what you'd expect to see from a performance cylinder head straight out of the gate. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, what it reminds me of is kind of the, look at a pro race bike. They're big giant ports, oval like that. A lot of times they went rectangle. Harley kind of went the same way with this. Or stepping back a few years, look at the old Hurricane heads. It's kind of very similar. So yeah, I mean, with a head like that, we can really throw a lot of cam at it. Compression through the roof, and with different intake designs, I'm sure Harley's going to mess around with that. But the way that intake port is, I mean, we're getting into almost downdraft induction areas.
Very,
The way
very
that,
close. Yeah.
that short turn radius is right there. So we'll see what happens in the future, but I wouldn't rule that out.
No, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. One of the differences that a lot of people may be excited about is the traditional pesky argument about oil in the intake. Now, if you haven't caught up on this, guys, that Harley now vent the crankcase pressure through the transmission cover, like a lot of the aftermarket do already for the traditional M8. The only difference they have here is they have an oil separator system. So as it comes up through the transmission cover, there's an oil separator, and then it vents up through the top, across the back, and over the top of the rear cylinder head, and then into the back of the airbox. Now, the difference there, yes, of course, it's got to go back into the intake manifold. That is just regulation. That's what Harley have to do. But instead of having the traditional little hoses that direct it back into the intake manifold, it is just literally a hole up in the back of the airbox that is above the intake port, and that's it. There's no directional hose that's pointing it in there or anything. So that is going to, by design, it's going to greatly reduce the amount of oil recirculating back in. One, you've got the oil separator there. Two, you've got the large uphill battle for the oil to go with. And three, it's not directed back into the intake port. So I think that is going to be, that'll hopefully put to bed the argument of all the oil back in the intake, because there is, apart from venting it externally, or with a catch can, there's nothing you can do about it. It's going to go back in there. That is just how it has to be, unfortunately.
No, that there's a lot of design work in this that I appreciate as a mechanic, like not having those oil lines going over the top of those rockers.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way to do that cleanly. Every time you pull them apart, no matter what you do to try to be clean about it, you had oil all over something somewhere. So what a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that they're no longer there. Those breathers in the heads. There's so many people that are going to say, "Oh, I told you those things were junk." Well, it's an evolution. Harley stuck with what they knew worked when they developed the M8. And as any good company, they evolve. They see what works, what doesn't. As the aftermarket comes out with different things, I can't help but think that Trask with their Checkmate cover had something to do with an aha moment at Harley-Davidson. And
no doubt.
hey, we can do this. And then not only that, Harley's not dumb. They're very frugal with what they're spending their money on. And if they can spend less time manufacturing a cylinder head, not putting provisions in for breathers, not manufacturing a breather assembly, there's a lot of parts that they're able to cut out and clean up that motor and clean up their process. So it's less parts to fail. The casting now doesn't have a bunch of holes in it, so the casting typically, I mean, you'd think it would be a little more, a little beefier. Um, there's just a lot of things I like about that. Um, they're doing a good job so far.
Yeah, it is a completely step forward in the right direction as far as I'm concerned too. I mean, as you said, like, I mean, I've lost track of how many oil lines I've pulled off the top of. If anything, the soft tails are a little more friendly because they sort of come off to the side easier, whereas the Tourer have to sort of come up and over. But I mean, I have pulled off hundreds of those things, and as Matt said there earlier, there's no way to do that cleanly. I have two like 1 quart bottle, like empty 1 quart bottles that I've cut off, about an inch or so high that I slip under there and under the box and let them drain for a little while first.
Yep.
And then, as they're draining, I'm doing something else to the bike, pulling the rest of the stuff off. And when it's time to bite the bullet and yank that thing out of there, it just oil spews. If it's not all over the engine, it's on the bench, on the floor, on your, like it just gets everywhere, and I hate it. So
Yep.
yeah, not having that there is definitely for me a great step forward. The only thing I'm not thrilled about is coolant. I mean, coolant will spill out of the pass-through hose there or in between the two cylinder heads, and
Hmm.
coolant is annoying to clean up. You can't just wipe it up, but it's just still it doesn't absorb into the rags as good as oil does. So as good of a win as it is with the oil lines not there, we will have to deal with a little bit of coolant spill. But hey, coolant is a much better cooling system than oil as far as I'm concerned for a cylinder head. So it is
Okay.
all a step forward in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe you can speak to how much coolant is actually in those heads. Are they still just around the exhaust ports, or is it a fully cooled head?
So it is still well. So the cooling system now, for those who don't know, it prioritizes the rear head first. So traditionally, it came up from the oil cooler on your traditional M8, flowed into the oil line that went over the top of the engine, and as a result of the design flow, it flowed through to the front and to the rear, and it was just like it was just a big circulating track of oil which cooled around the exhaust valves of the cylinder heads. Now it prioritizes the rear head first. It needs to do that because the rear cylinder head runs hotter because it's getting less airflow. And two, by the time it travels through there, it's removing more heat quickly from the rear and then transferring to the front, getting cooler. So there's a couple of benefits there to be had. But as far as the system goes, it still does favour the exhaust valve, but it still flows like a cross flow through the cylinder head more so than just around the heads and then back out and over the top. So it is a flow through the head. So that is definitely more of an improved design. But as it does flow from the rear of the rear head through to the front, out in between the two of them and into the front and then out past the exhaust. So yeah, it's a complete flow through system, if that makes sense.
Okay. So is
Not
that a
sure that
different?
I'm not
What about oil
go ahead.
pumps? Is it still different oil pumps for for that Rev Max, or are they using the water cooled
I,
pump?
I, to be honest, Matt, I don't think so. I believe it is still the traditional 8 lobe oil cooled pump. As far as I'm aware, there is no different from what I will find out information, guys. I'll put if there is a difference, I've got access to HDNet. I can find out part numbers and put any differences down in the comments there. If it is the same, all good. If it's not, it'll just I can't see it being a redesign from what they've already got because as a guy who works for Harley, I've not seen any bulletins or anything come out on this. But again, I will check HDNet just to clarify that, but I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's just the 8 lobe uh, oil pump, so to speak, because the full cooling system now is water cooled with the water pump, so they don't need the other Gerotor for that one. So yeah.
Okay. Maybe get into how did that exhaust fit? You use that full Chromework system on this new VVT engine. How did installation go on that?
Yeah, yeah. So install was quite easy. Obviously, Chromeworks, as you know, Matt, make a great product as far as O2 uh, positioning is really friendly on those. Um, it was a direct fit. The only issue was the cat because obviously now they have the post cat. They have the two pre cat, which has traditionally been there for a long time, but now they have a post cat O2 sensor, which the Chromeworks system did not provision for at this time. I'm sure in the coming months, Chromeworks will be like, oh, okay, well, we need to install that, and that'll just come straight out of the box like that.
Hmm.
But for the moment, it doesn't take a guy. I mean, you don't need to be a very skilled mechanic or even anyone with a few tools at home to be able to drill it, to just eyeball where it's got to go, drill the hole, weld in the new bung, screw the O2 sensor in, away you go. It's very simple, sort of straightforward. It's not a big deal at all. But fitment for that Chromeworks system just bolted straight up. All the mounting points were the same as your traditional M8, and yeah, no issues whatsoever. The black chrome that Chromeworks offer now, that almost identically matches the CVO finish, was outstanding, because obviously you buy the CVO, you want that premium product, you want the premium finish. And shout out to Chromeworks. I mean, props to those guys for coming to the party and really delivering a standout result that just fits, in my opinion. You wouldn't know the difference as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, their systems are just such a pleasure to deal with. O2 sensors in the right areas, easy to get to. You don't need any weird tools to get in there. It's just such a pleasure to work with their systems. So, did I hear right? A standard M8 exhaust system will bolt up to the new RevMax engine?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, cool.
for sure.
All
Yeah,
right.
all the mounting points were exactly the same. The hanger bracket, obviously supplied with the Chromeworks system, was different, but other than that, yeah, your traditional system should bolt straight up. There is gaskets now that are on the slip-ons of the standard header. So on the standard header that comes on the new CVO, there is now, because there used to just be a slip fit with a big clamp, but now there are gaskets on there now. And there's three cats in the standard system. You probably saw that, Matt. There's one in the header pipe at the collector, and there's two in each muffler, or there's one in each muffler. So a total of three cats in the new CVO as a standard unit. But yeah, if you were to buy a complete system for a M8 Tourer, it'll fit the CVO. Yeah,
Okay.
minus the post cat O2 sensor bung in the crossover hose, yeah, crossover pipe.
Excellent. We touched on air cleaners a little bit and how restrictive that box was. In your video, you said you had a Scream Eagle Extreme ventilator, or the Extreme Wedge to put on there, and I
Yeah,
found that to be an excellent air cleaner on the 135s. Um,
yeah,
testing and tuning, you always trying to find where the restriction is, and on the first couple 135s they came in with that Extreme Wedge on there, and usually you can pull the air cleaner off and maybe gain 1 or 2 points. That legitimately, I couldn't gain anything. That's a zero loss setup. So Harley did a very good job at that. So I'm excited to see what it does on that RevMax.
yeah. I've already got it ordered. It has turned up. When Matt and I recorded this video, the air cleaner for that bike is on the shelf at my dealership, ready to go. So I will be installing that early next week and posting the results on there. The owner of the bike is just more than excited. He's like, "Can I come? Can I come and get it now?" And I was like, "Man, I'm too busy. I've got other engine builds on the go." So early next week we'll get it done for you. But yeah, he's just so excited. I mean, I don't, he's almost just like, I don't need permission to do anything on that bike. He just said, if it's available, Tommy, let's fit it, let's do it, let's just push this envelope. He just wants to be the first to do it as quick as he can. So yeah, shout out to the customer for wanting to get on board as positive as I am about it.
Yeah. Um, what else? Was there anything that really surprised you when you got into that one?
Well, so the engine. So when I got into the engine, so we'll talk about the engine. When I was down in Sydney and I had the engine apart, looking at it, what I did notice. Now I don't know if it's by design, but the piston sits proud of the deck of the cylinder in this case, about 20 thou. It's quite high out of the cylinder deck. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if that's their way they're chasing the compression, or it's a design fault. Like I don't know. I wouldn't call it a design fault. I just think maybe an afterthought or something. But it just sticks out very, very. 20 thousandths is a lot to stick out of the top of the cylinder. There's a huge thick head gasket on there now,
That's
which
what I was
is
thinking.
yeah, it's a very, very thick, like It'd have to be 70 thou maybe. It's quite thick, 60 or 70 thou. I didn't measure it, but it's very thick. Like it is huge. So the combustion chamber is a different shape too, which is new. There's a lot less shrouding around the intake and exhaust ports. The way they've designed the combustion chamber. But I believe the advertised compression was 11. Oh, I'm going to get caught out here. 11.4, I
Oh, yeah, I
believe.
was going to say 11.4, 11.5, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is quite high, but higher than the 10.5 of the 114. Yeah, 11.4, 11.5, I think was advertised on it. Yeah, so
Mhm.
maybe that was how they got it. Just with it's a new 4 and 5/8 stroke. So obviously the 114 and 117 have a 4.5 inch stroke. This thing has a 4 and 5/8 stroke. So that alone opens up the window to massive cubic inch um, available options in the future with bigger bores. So.
Right.
Mm.
Well, and just thinking with a bigger head gasket like that, big, thicker head gasket, that sounds like they're combating thermal transfer. So that's going to keep that heat down in that cylinder and out of that cylinder head by
Hmm.
putting that bigger, thicker gasket there. So
Yeah,
that's going to keep things straight. It's probably going to help with exhaust leaks, or not exhaust leaks, but head gasket leaks. Um,
yeah.
that's a pretty smart design.
Mm. Yeah, there was a few other things that I noticed. Obviously, we talked about the intake setup earlier, but the combustion chamber is obviously different. The valve springs that are coming, I didn't. So when I was there, I went through it and I asked a lot of the guys who were there, but obviously, being the information was so brand new, I don't have the part numbers, but I'm pretty sure that the springs that come in the new cylinder head of the VVT engine are the same springs that you would have bought as a Screaming Eagle upgrade in the catalogue. So they are a high lift spring straight out of the box, which is great. That's already loaded in there.
Mhm.
We did muck around and dial in the cam. We got a few degrees on it, but it wasn't the most accurate way to do it because we didn't have oil pressure in the phaser, so it could have been moving. But we did calculate very approximately, guys. So don't cancel me for getting the specs wrong, but the measurements that we took was 519 lift, and the intake valve opened 6 degrees before top dead center, and it closed at bottom dead center. So at 0 degrees, closed at bottom dead center. Now, obviously, taking into account the VVT, you can go 10 degrees either side. So they were, I'm on the record saying I'm not on the record because it was, there was not enough oil pressure in the phaser and it was, we were just mucking around checking it out. So it'll be interesting to see how off we are, if at all, when the specs do finally get published on it.
Sure. I mean, that's right in the pocket of so many of the current M8 cam offerings. So it sounds like Harley just kind of went off of what they knew it worked, and I'm interested to know with the VVT. So obviously it's oil pressure driven, but what else do you know is actually triggering that? Is it map pressure? What's it running on?
So as far as I know, they talk about some of the videos I've seen is cam torque actuation. So as the lobe of the camshaft comes over the valve spring, and obviously the torque, the force of the spring trying to push against the lobe is sent down through the valve train, obviously, which is then that's how it's picked. Obviously, there's a cam sensor. Some of the tuning that I saw some of the tuning, some of the tables that I saw in the Screaming Eagle calibration there were based off of load. So there was some throttle position and map stuff as well. So I would assume under load and this cam torque actuation that they talk about. So that's all I have on that at the minute.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
So I would assume, yeah, obviously RPM, cam sensor, throttle position, manifold pressure being key
Hmm.
key contributors there. But as far as the rest of it, I just can't speak to any of it.
Yeah.
Legitimately, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think for a performance aspect, I don't know how much performance we're going to gain with the VVT. I'm thinking that's more of an emissions thing. Now, if it was four different cams, like the Sportster line, and it was VVT, now we're playing with fire there. Now we can really do something with VVT. But
Yeah.
my hypothesis is we're going to lock that phaser up and be able to tune around it. and you're just going to tune it like a regular Harley because
Yeah.
you know you're dealing with one cam, and it's kind of pointless to have
Yeah.
that.
Any changes to the intake go straight to the exhaust. So, you advance or retard the intake, you're advancing or retarding the exhaust at the same time, which is kind of, as a tuning perspective or performance perspective, kind of not what you want to do. You kind of want to make the intake open as early and shut as late. Like you don't want to be mucking with the same thing twice. It's kind of, yeah, it's not what you want. But as Matt just said, definitely more of an emissions driven move, wrapped around a performance style best of both worlds blanket, if you will, in my
Sure.
opinion.
Yep. I guess we'll just
Because
have to
in a
follow what
sense,
Scream Eagle does because they're going to know first.
yeah,
Follow that
for
Scream
sure.
Eagle catalog and what they
Yeah,
offer.
yeah,
They've already got it
exactly
figured
right.
out. They just have to bring it to market.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I had a few guys talking in some comments that I posted on things and trying to explain the benefits of a VVT. So I'll just touch on that quickly. And Matt, feel free to add to this as much as you want. But just in a nutshell, folks, the idea of VVT essentially is to have variable valve timing. So that in itself should hopefully dictate the benefits of it. The timing of the cam is variable, so it can move retarded or advanced from a static position. Now, the benefits of that, what are the benefits, right? So traditionally you have a stock cam and then you have a torque cam or a power cam. So the VVT basically combines the three of those as best it can within a certain range of parameters. Now, torque cams generally provide a little bit more a little bit more grunt down low. So especially if guys want touring and two up style riding that have a lot more load on their bike, a lot heavier bikes. So some of the baggers and things like that, most of the time will want more of a torque cam, and then some of the guys who are doing a little bit more racing will want a horsepower cam, something that works from the mid range on. The benefits of the VVT is to obviously combine that so you can have a bit more torque down low and still have the benefits of a horsepower cam. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. Matt, if you wouldn't mind just throwing in your analysis of it and maybe see what people think.
Yeah, I think it's the exact same thing that you said. If they're advancing that cam down low, it's going to be torquier. It's going to have a torquier feel. If they're riding two up, that's going to be an advantage because now it's closing the intake valve sooner, and it's just going to be a lot torquier off the line. And then on the other side of it, if they're pouring the coals to it and they're going full throttle somewhere, that thing is probably retarding a little bit and letting it breathe a little bit more up top too. So like you said, it's only swinging 10 degrees either way. Um, it's not a huge. It sounds like a lot, but I don't think it's really going to be super meaningful. And
Mm, mm,
yeah, it'll definitely help. I think with a lot of our riders that we have now, they're new to riding, and Harley's doing a good job of making the motorcycle easier to ride. Um, with
yeah,
hill assist and everything else that comes on them now. Um,
yeah,
this was just another step in not only helping with emissions, but helping with rider control that Harley's been so focused on.
yeah,
And let's face it,
for
these
sure.
things need it. With a beginner rider, um, these bikes are putting out some serious power, and
Yeah,
you get a brand new rider on a bike that's putting out over 100 horsepower. I mean, think back 10 years ago, 100 horsepower guys had to spend thousands to get. Um,
yeah.
these bikes came out of the factory with 65 horsepower, and people were still crashing them. So now we're almost double that.
Yeah, yeah, almost. Well, I'm not sure what the licensing situation is over there, specifically in your state of Florida, but here in Queensland, Australia, that I'm not sure because it's been so many years since I've got my license. But I believe now there's what they have a learner program that I believe lasts for 2 years when you can only ride up to a 650cc with very strict circumstances. And then from there, you sit another practical test, which essentially gives you your open bike license. So, and you can't even go for your Lamb's license until I think you're 18 or 19. So, it is getting harder to get your license. So yeah, I'm not sure what it's like over in Florida there, but it's our
Well, in the
situation.
United States, it's you just do a motorcycle test, and you don't have to test on your motorcycle. You can ride a mini bike on that course to make it easier on yourself. And you
Wow,
pass there's kind of an obstacle course, if you will, that you have to go through and answer some questions on a written test, and you got your motorcycle license. So they don't limit you at all. I mean, you could
that's
get on
it.
a
Wow.
Hayabusa as your first bike if you wanted.
Wow. And so what's the age? Like 16, 17, 18? Is there a
If you are under 21, most states will mandate that you have to have a helmet. Some states they mandate helmets anyways. Um,
right?
but I believe, I believe you can get your motorcycle license when you're 16. So same thing as your driver's license over here. You can get it when you're 16.
Yeah. Wow. Cool.
Yep.
Unreal. Yeah,
Yep.
well, a couple other differences there with the M8, the new VVT engine that I did I did discuss in the other video, but just for this video's sake, the counterbalancer. So it has been lightened significantly, as I'm assuming as a way to sort of combat some parasitic loss there, just reduce the rotating mass. It still provides the same amount of imbalance to the engine or counterbalance to the engine, if you will. But yeah, it has definitely been lightened up. If you want to check it out, guys, the video, the link's down the bottom there. But you can definitely see, because I was there, I was looking at the new one. I didn't have an old one there to compare it to, but you can see how it's all, I guess, skeletonized now. It has the center of it all removed as a way of removing as much weight as possible. And the shift drum that in the transmission has been essentially lightened up and redesigned as well, just to aid in smoother, more positive shifting. So they are, I think, if there are any more, I'll touch on them. But they're the only ones that are coming to me at the moment. Yeah, that are the differences.
Um, I noticed on the clutch cover that now the speed sensor is moved from underneath the starter. Now there's some new electronics right behind that clutch cover. What is that?
So as far as I know, that's the gear position sensor. So initially, I thought when I was mucking around trying to find a speed sensor for it, I pulled that guy out, and that was just gear position sensor on that one there. So as far as I know, there must just be a pawl with a positive, or they must just have a counter that spins around that's driven off the shift drum, I would assume. But haven't actually taken it off to have a look. But yeah, definitely when I took it off, I had no gear indicator up on the dash, so.
Mhm.
I can only assume that it's still and only for the gear position sensor.
Okay.
You talk the clutch cover on the right hand side, like behind the
Right.
cam cover. Yeah,
Yep.
yep, yep.
Yep. When I was poking around on that bike, I mean, willy nilly, I was just unplugging things to see what would make a meaningful difference. So
Yeah,
right away,
yeah,
noticed that the speed sensor was gone. So I
yeah.
unplugged
In
that.
the housing, yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
I
exactly what
unplugged.
I did.
Yep. So I did that, but I did a 1-2 punch. I had the bike running, and I just unplugged the ABS control and that at all the same time. So it was kind of a 1-2 punch, and
Yeah,
it went through
right,
my
right.
poles. So like I said, I didn't have a whole lot of time with that bike, so I was just kind of grasping at
Yeah,
straws, just trying to get a full pull out
trying
of
to.
it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I did the same thing because I noticed in the casting of the transmission, there was no speed sensor, and I was like, oh, that's where is it? And I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, this is new on the side here. The sensor on the clutch cover. And I'm like, oh, it's got to be something to do with there. So I immediately just pulled that out, and I was like, no, that definitely wasn't it. Moved on. I was like, rear wheel speed's got to come from somewhere. ABS sensor, don't that'll do. And lo and behold, that's what it was. So
Right.
happy
Yep.
days.
Yep. Same path.
If you yeah, if guys are out there watching that wanting to know how to disconnect your speed sensor, that's how you do it. But unfortunately, you get no speedo on the dash, and obviously you're going to have BCM and ECM engine lights and stuff come on and that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
I
your
do not recommend.
dashboard's gonna look like a Christmas tree.
Yeah,
Every
yeah,
light
unless you
comes
know
on.
unless you know how to clear your own fault codes, I wouldn't recommend mucking around with it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Not to mention it could be dangerous. So you disconnect your ABS system. That's don't do that on the road.
No,
You can,
no,
yeah,
definitely not. Definitely not. No, I'm very excited, Matt, to see where the future is on these things. Yeah, I've had a few standout builds that have came through the doors there at my dealership, which have been really fun to deal with. I mean, it's so easy now to have a combo that goes 150, quite easily. Like on a quite, I'm going to go out and call it a mild build. Like these things are under 11.5 to 1. And you make it 150 without a real problem at all. So, I mean, yeah,
right.
it's been really fun the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, coincidentally, probably the two standouts were, well, one I had in the last month, I had that 2013 Road Glide that another business that sends me all their tunes, they did an M8 conversion on it. So they
I
put
see that.
an M8, they built a 114 up to a 128, and then put that in that 2013 Road Glide, and then I tuned it up. And that was just a stock head 128 with a Alpha Performance 485 cam, um,
Yeah.
and it had Chromework system on there. And again, it was stock heads, 55 millimeter throttle body, and it pulled 140 horse and 150 foot-pounds of torque,
It's crazy.
with 11 2-to-1 compression. So I mean, people are like, well, why did they do that to 2013? Well, why not?
Yeah,
Because I mean,
exactly.
that's the same as if they would have taken a twin cam and built a 124. It would have been right in that pocket too. But
Yeah.
why not make that motorcycle more relevant and put the newer power plant in there? I think it was a great idea. It was fun.
What management system was up? Did they have the complete wiring harness from the M8 come over, or because obviously
Yeah, so there was a lot that went into it. I mean, looking at it, you pull the seat off and it looked like it was factory. Um,
wow.
So the guys that are interested in doing that, reach out to JCL Customs in Tallahassee, Florida. Um, talk to James about that. He has a basically a whole process that he has that he will divulge to you. He's going to be selling a kit, um, which includes a wiring harness and sensors and everything you need to be able to successfully do that kit. Plug and play, super easy. Um, with that
That's
one,
awesome.
yeah. So with that one, that was a tune with a Thunder Max. Um, just
Oh, okay.
yeah, because of to not fight with the CAN bus system with all the gauges and everything else like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
reason for
Yeah.
going. We're going T Max. However, he does have another way where we don't have to go that route. So
Okay.
that's pretty cool. So that was definitely a standout because that was pretty cool. Um, And then just coincidentally last night, I mean, I had two bikes, 128 with Screaming Eagle plus one heads. It was Cyclorama's 128 kit with the infamous dimpled pistons,
Yeah.
that work. Um, those motors are
Yeah.
so quiet. And anyone that's never heard one of those are some of the quietest engines that you will come across. They
Hmm.
just they run very nice. And then it just had a 470 cam, a bolt-in lift cam, and I pulled
Yep. Yep.
153 horse and just almost tickled 150 torque. It was 149.8, I think it was. Um,
Yep. Yep.
but that's fun when you can do that with just a simple bolted, bolt-in parts, no trickery,
Yep.
nothing super custom, and be able to bang those kind of numbers. That's just fun. And then they had a street bob that they brought up that I tuned yesterday. And apparently, the last race that this street bob was at, they teched it. They were going to kick him out because they said he was cheating and whatever. And I went through the bike yesterday, and it was a stock 114 street bob. It had an
Wow.
S&S 55 millimeter intake on it, the stock throttle body, um, and it had a very low end exhaust, a Shark Road 2-into-1 exhaust. Um,
Yep. Yep.
and they put Elf Performance's 45 cam in it. That's it. I mean, that's as budget as you can get. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
there was nothing special about this thing, but I mean, right away, the baseline, it was pulling like 128 horsepower. I'm like, oh my gosh, and then I started tuning it, and I got it all the way up to 133 and like a few tenths away from 135 foot-pounds of torque. Um,
Wow.
with, I mean, let's just face it, that's not an exhaust you would turn to for serious performance.
No, no, not at
But
all. Not at
as you
all.
know, I mean, these M8s, it's all about that combo, and you find that
Yeah,
magic combination that works, and don't
and
really
you're
care
right.
where you get the parts from. If it works, it works. But
Yeah,
that was probably the funnest because it took literally the smallest amounts of parts I ever seen to make those kind of numbers.
great numbers. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's unreal.
intake manifold, injectors, a cam, and he could have, if they really wanted to go through it, it could have just been a cheap exhaust, a cam, fuel injectors, and an intake manifold, plus the labor to tune it. That's it.
Yeah,
That's about as budget as you're going to find. And then to get those kind of numbers out of it. I mean, let's face it, that bike was what, 80 horse when it was stock? And
yeah,
now it's 133, 53 more horsepower. Um,
that's unbelievable.
that was pretty exciting to see.
That's unreal.
And then one thing people need to know though when they're comparing this, because so many of the dyno graphs that you see online are touring bikes. Um, you put a touring bike on the drum versus a Softail. Literally, the weight of the bike makes a difference with the power output on that dyno because you've
Yeah,
got more rolling resistance on that drum. So that's something that you really need to keep an eye on. You can't really compare apples to apples if you're looking at a Softail and you have a touring bike. If you have a touring bike, your numbers are not going to match that Softail. It will never do that. So just keep that in mind.
yeah. No, that's exactly right there. Um, you mentioned that the 470 there before, Matt, which is, for such a, what most people would probably shy away from being 470 lift, or it is an unbelievable camshaft as far as performance goes. That thing is a weapon of a camshaft for a bolt-in cam. It is unbelievable. I've had some great results with it in the past. I haven't used it much of late. Obviously, I work a lot with APE here in Australia, and I use a lot of their grinds. I still use a lot of Cyclorama stuff, to be honest. I mean, I use a lot of their go-to cams from the 480, which is obviously phased out now. I'm itching to get my hands on the 480 MT. I cannot wait to tune one of those things and see what they're about. But that 470 is a definitely bang for buck camshaft. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. People always ask, well, because they get hung up on that lift number. Oh, it's got to be a smaller camshaft, and no, that's actually a very big camshaft. It's got a lot of duration to it. Um,
Yeah,
it it's a different animal, and then the difference between that 470 and the 485. Yeah, there's 15 thousandths lift, but the that 485 takes everything that the 470 did and just makes it a little better. So that 485, that thing rips. It's a very
yeah,
impressive camshaft in the right application. Um,
yeah,
you know, you can't use, you can't if you've got neighbor hater mufflers and a true dual system, you don't want to put the 485 in that bike. It's
no,
not a good combination. That's when we talk about combo, combo, combo. So now if you got that kind of exhaust system, you're going to want to step that back a little bit. You're going to want to go to that 480 MT
yeah.
because you're going to have a lot less pumping losses with that setup versus that 485. So there's a quick tip for y'all.
Yeah, and on those tip notes there, guys, as I mentioned at the start there, Matt's got some great content on his Facebook page. Matt's got a few videos there. Shotgun with Matt, I think the series is called. And Matt's just talking to you as real as it gets, guys, about combos, camshafts, push rod adjustment, tuning devices. Like the list is endless. I mean, you'll spend hours watching the content, guys. I really highly recommend getting out there and checking it out. So hit him up on Facebook if you don't. Most of you probably already follow him there. He's got a lot of followers there. But yeah, those dyno guys on Facebook, guys. I'll put a link down in the video in the description here for you to check it out. But some really great information in there if you're eager and hungry for any more of that inside information. So plenty of it there. All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know I had a great time. I'm sure Matt had a great time too. Matt and I have done a few of these conversations in the past before. So if you just want to check them out, hit them up on my channel there, and go for it. Watch them, check it out. Until then, folks, I'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.